We are live. Welcome to another Critique the Community. This one is going to be on artificial intelligent created art. I've taken a sneak peek at some of these. They all look incredible. This whole thing, I know you and Pi did a whole video about it. I watched a portion of it. I haven't finished it yet. I'm sure you've already gone over this. I feel like this is a big deal. A lot of people don't really seem to care. It's just another computer thing. Like, it seems like a huge evolution in image making.
Yeah. I mean, I find that I'm logging into Midjourney, which is what I think most of these that we're going to see today are created from. Seems like it's the most powerful so far. I will log into Midjourney just to make something when I need a random image for something, you know?
Yeah. Like, I'm having my book cover designed right now. And I've had hundreds of submissions and nothing I really love yet. And I'm thinking, should I just go on Midjourney and like start putting in some ideas and seeing what comes up, you know? Yeah. It's basically free. I don't know, you're paying like $10 a month for the pro
I'm doing
counter?
$30 a month.
Okay.
And, you know, it's already telling me I'm running out of prompts that I can do.
Okay.
Because you get so many fast ones, and like it depends on how fast the algorithm works to like make the thing.
Okay.
But as you're gonna see in here, it's pretty wild what this stuff can create.
Well, if you would like to be a part of the next critique, we've opened it up right now. Head over to fstoppers.com/contests. The next theme is speed.
Speed.
So the image that I chose as the featured image is a car with some, you know, cool motion blur. It doesn't have to be car photography. Anything that's moving, I would imagine motion blur is kind of what we're looking for.
Speed, man.
Yeah, man.
Okay.
All right, are you ready to get to this critique?
I am. So we have three. I said we were going to give away 3 tutorials on this to kind of entice people to submit, even if they're outside of the Fstoppers community, right?
Okay.
So the first one should go to the highest winner, but then should we do 2 random ones?
You want to just do the last 2 so we can't possibly forget?
The last 2 images.
Or the first 3, whatever you want.
Let's do the last 2. Keep people
watching. First one and last 2. Okay. Here is an image. This is the highest rated image.
Yes, this one was rated the highest.
So
one thing I'm curious about is, as you pull these up on your computer, is what the average ranking was for this, because many people notoriously rank things low and kind of crap on other people's photography. But now when it's all made by machine art, are we ranking things higher, or people more forgiving, or the same kind of social effects in play?
This was rated 3.5 stars by Kevin Johnson. Is it even worth saying people's names? Like, did humans even have a hand in this? It's just crazy. I mean, this is so good. If this was, I mean, when I look at this stuff, I can't even tell that this is computer generated.
Well,
I would think that this could be a painting.
I think we should do a critique in the future where we try to find, I wanted to do one where it's AI generated art or real art. And I feel like the AI art does have a look that
that would be an interesting video. We try to guess.
I tried to start it and I was having a hard time finding. I can't find any AI art that looks like photographs. But I also couldn't find any human art that looked a lot like AI art. I feel like there's a divide in there right now. But as time goes on, I think it's going to
But I mean, this specifically, I don't know that this looks like Midjourney, and we have some coming up that look very painterly.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you should do a test with me. Like, I think I could identify Midjourney art versus not.
We should do it. All right, I don't know how the hell we're gonna rate these. Are we just rating them for artistic merit?
How cool they look, or how well the algorithm did? Like, I don't know. We found ourselves in a strange situation here.
All right, let's go ahead and just rate it.
All right.
1, 2, 3, go. 4 stars.
4?
It's excellent. I don't know. It looks super cool. This was created in Midjourney. Tried to go for a fashion/streetwear photo. Got good results, especially with faces. Here are some of the words he used. Beautiful woman, brunette bangs, symmetrical face, shaped eyes, brows, realistic, symmetrical eyes, high cheekbones, smooth skin, blah, 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 blah.
So I don't know if you got this far in the conversation with Pi and I, but we were talking about becoming well-skilled experts at prompt writers. And, you know, the more I play with this, I don't know that that's even true. Because you will just type in high cheekbones, symmetrical face, Asian look. You can do all this like specific stuff. And then sometimes I do that, and the output that I get looks nothing like what I want. And then other times I'm taking an image and I'm giving the software that URL. And then there's qualifiers that you can do to say how heavy do you want to weight the image that you're giving it.
I didn't know you could do that.
And for me, a lot of times it's like the image looks nothing like the reference image. So there's still some weird things going on where Pratik Nayak, he's really deep into this. You can look at his profile and see the keywords he uses. And sometimes he puts in a qualifier that's like a certain artist or a certain type of matte painting, and you're like, oh, okay, that's clever, and it looks great. But then other times you'll see images where it's just like 20 keywords. Michelangelo stone carving of LeBron James was one I did recently. I played around with that for 30 minutes trying to get every keyword in the right place, and I never got an image that looks like this, even though I feel like my words were really, really descriptive.
Right.
So sometimes I feel like it's hit or miss, which kind of adds to the conversation of who's really directing this. Is it really art? Are you really capable of navigating this to what you want, or is it a crapshoot?
I think a lot of times you're not navigating it to what you want. You're just navigating it to something that looks super cool, and you're like, oh, hell yeah, that's what I meant to do right there. Look at that, you know? The computer's doing it.
So the next few images I want to show you are pretty crazy. I don't think they're made with Midjourney, but they're made with Wall-E, which you have to, it's in a beta form and you can't get access to yet. I can't wait to get access to this.
Okay.
Check this out. This is made by Luca Storelli.
Is this a person or an application?
This is a person using Wall-E, which is like the next one that, you know, if you don't have access to Midjourney, maybe you have access to Wall-E. But very soon, everyone will have access to this. Look at this.
Yeah, like I can't tell that's fake.
Okay, here's another one of his. Now, he's not part of the Fstoppers community, and there's a debate of who owns copyright of any of this. So I'm just going to show these images because I don't think he really created them. But this just shows the power of what the next versions of these AI software is going to do. I mean, look at that. That's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
Would you be able to tell that that's not a real photograph?
No.
And then here's the final one that I saw posted.
Yeah, it's crazy. There's no way I could tell this is not real.
So for all of you that are watching and you know going to see the next 10 images and you're going to say, it looks nothing like photography, I just want to plant the seed that this is what's coming very, very soon.
Yeah, I just feel like a lot of people they're ignoring how big of a deal this is. You know, I saw somebody arguing with you like, people said photography was going to destroy the drawing and painting, and you were like, yeah, it did. It did. How often do you pick up a magazine and there's a painting on the cover? It's a photograph every time. And what happens when you can create a flawless human being with a few keywords rather than hiring some model and doing hours of makeup and retouching? Getting
licenses, getting them to show up, hiring hair and makeup, like all the things that come with a big production photo shoot.
I think people are
underestimating
this for sure. This is going to disrupt everything, and it's also crazy that all this stuff is coming out all at the exact same moment. You know?
It just shows how much people have been working behind the scenes. The other thing that's interesting about this is how many times have we been pitched software and it's got AI built into a photo editing suite, and it's pretty good. Like it'll create a mask, but it's not doing anything like this. So in some ways, I feel a little disappointed now in the AI that was sold to us the last 5 years when I see this, because I feel like this is real machine learning. This is actually doing a whole lot more, but maybe this is what's coming to programs like Photoshop and Lightroom and Luminar and all these other software that, kind of do a little bit of AI neural, learning.
So our buddy Keith, he's said for years now, he's like, dude, man, photography's on the way out. Soon, we're going to be able to, we're going to have cameras, but instead of it being like a lens, it's just going to capture like a 3D bitmap of somebody's face. And then you're going to be able to just drop it in some application and do anything you could imagine. And I'm like, yeah, one day it'll be like that. But it's like, today is the day.
He's like, you're going to move the light.
Yeah.
And you're going to choose a ProPhoto 3-foot octobox, and it's going to put it how close, and you're going to be able to real 3D model it and then say, like, that's the one I want.
And the thing is like, yeah, we don't have DSLRs and pro cameras that do this yet, but our freaking iPhones have these LiDAR sensors built in.
Yeah.
I feel like we haven't really been able to use them. Like I've been able to build like 3D maps of rooms and stuff using the new iPhone, and it's cool, but it's not perfect. It's not totally usable yet.
Yeah.
But if you put that technology with this level of computer rendering, I mean...
Are companies like IKEA already doing that? Where they're designing, print ads using...
Yeah, just 3D models rather than photography of spaces, and so...
Apparently I'm saying Wall-E like the movie. It's Dall-E, like Salvador Dali.
Oh.
It's D. Dall-E, so...
Come on, Patrick.
I got to get it together. So, yeah, so this is pretty crazy. I wish... I had access to this because I think this would make this episode even more crazy. But
well, maybe that's a critique in the future. We'll use this new software.
I was just saying how I wouldn't be able to distinguish between photos. It would be very easy to distinguish between photos and AI art. Well, with this software, I don't think I could.
Right.
If I saw that, I would be like, oh, this is a.
It's a good shot.
Yeah. All right, so let's move on to our actual critique. Here's image. Oh, this is the final one. This was one Pratik actually made. And this is, he was like, the eyes have some kind of weird, jittery type stuff going on. But I mean, still, doesn't that look like a snapshot off
it's like a bad photograph.
It's like off of Flickr?
Somehow, the software has surpassed even bad photographers now. It can create good work or bad.
Well, it's probably referencing a lot of bad photography on the web. And they were like, this is what we think you should desire.
It's crazy.
All right, image number 2. This definitely looks like a Midjourney. I don't know if we required everyone to tell us where they created their images, but this one I feel like definitely has that Midjourney look.
This was created by Joe Zvelnes, and he says, Kimono girl dancing in the rain using Midjourney. Yeah, there's definitely a vibe to Midjourney images that I've become more accustomed to seeing. I'm a part of a Midjourney Facebook group, and the stuff that shows up on my Facebook feed is like the best of the best stuff, and it is incredible. But I can usually pick it out now. And maybe it's not because the Midjourney stuff looks so specific. In some cases it does, but I think it's because I just know I'll never see that good of art on Facebook. I've never seen art this cool on Facebook ever, and so when I see like 30 awesome pieces of art every day on Facebook now, I just assume it's Midjourney.
Here's the question I proposed to Pi. Is do you think you will scroll past this? Like I already feel like I am.
Yeah.
Are you losing interest and you're like, oh, cool, somebody else is making really high quality art, but I really don't care about it enough to click and look through it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly more likely to do that than I was a few weeks ago.
Yeah, it's like already wearing off.
Yeah.
But the thing is, and this is what's so wild, is most people around us, most people that are not part of this show and the photo and creative world, they have no idea. And even if they do, they don't really get it. Like I was telling my dad, I was like, think of something, the craziest thing you can think of. And he was like, a drone. And I'm like, no, Dad, like crazier. And he's like, a drone with a salmon. And I'm like, crazier. Like a drone, how about I just give it to you? A drone fishing for salmon in Alaska during a snowstorm. It's crazy, right? And I type it in, and this is one of those great examples where like the drone became a salmon, and it didn't translate well, but he just looked at it and was like, that's kind of cool. So and we moved on to the next conversation.
Right.
So I think people don't really understand AI art yet at all. But those of us that are in the creative field, everyone probably watching this video, we're all dabbling in it now, making stuff.
So I think I brought this up to you in the last video, and maybe Midjourney is making millions of dollars and whatever, but it seems to me like they have created this incredible technology that could have been priceless if they had kept it to themselves and never told the world that we made an application that is doing all of this work. Like, Banksy, people speculate that Banksy is not an individual person.
Yeah.
He's like a group of people that are making all these art things. What if, you created like the new Banksy or whatever, but it's literally just an application that you own.
And it's like every week a new piece of art's going to be released. And
Yeah.
it's going to go to auction. And
Yeah, but like who's the guy who just sold all the crazy NFT, Beeple or whatever, who's doing like a piece of art a day,
Yeah.
and his stuff is pretty cool. It's nowhere near as cool as what everybody's creating on this, and he
Yeah.
made like $70 million or whatever off selling that one thing. So I don't know. Maybe if there's thousands of people like you that are paying $30 a month, then they're doing great.
Well, that's what Pi and I talked about in the podcast, which I will put a link in the description here. It's an hour and a half, but we talk about a lot of different things. I'm very cynical about this. I feel like this is horrible for all of art. I feel like this is going to make all art and all visuals cheaper and less exciting on a whole, and Pi kind of felt that way too. He was basically saying that. He was like, I mean, we didn't talk about Beeple, but does Beeple's art, the crazy stuff he has where it's like Trump crabs, whatever it could be, the most offensive thing you could think of, is that as valuable now when you can just type it into a program and get something that actually looks better than what Beeple did, and you can create it in, a minute.
I know. It's almost like he knew it was coming, and he was like, I gotta get this NFT up now.
Yeah.
Because there's this program that can do everything that I do way better. But he timed it perfect.
I think, it goes back to marketing. If there will be somebody who will use this technology and become the Beeple, and we're all sitting there like, how is this guy's art selling for hundreds of thousands of dollars, or whatever it is, and we're all going to be mad and frustrated. I guarantee you that's going to happen. So it has to do with marketing, much the same that photography does. There's people that are taking photos that aren't great, and they just know how to market, build relationships, promote stuff, make it feel like it's exclusive and it's valuable. So that's always been part of the art game. But I do wonder, Pi and I were kind of talking, is all art and visuals going to just become less and less interesting to us? I think that's already happening.
Yeah.
You see it with Instagram. What are they doing? They're pivoting to video because video captures your attention even more than photos. But then what's next? Is it augmented reality or virtual reality? It's something to where you can have the experience versus just watching.
Yeah, you can like hang out with Zuckerberg one-on-one.
I don't know if anyone wants to do
That's
that.
the future of human society.
We got to rate this.
1, 2, 3. I don't know.
It's gonna be
it looks amazing.
4
It's 4 stars. Next up. I think we need to stop rating these. I mean, this is incredible too. I don't know how to rate any of this. If I knew this was human-made, it'd be like 5 stars. Every one would be 5 stars.
What's interesting looking at this is this immediately makes me think of like some kind of fantasy movie, and you need to storyboard something for costume design.
Yeah.
And what if you're like, I spent 30 minutes. I didn't even do that. I told my intern to do stuff, and this is one of the things he came up with, and this is the perfect villain character.
Right.
Like, design it like that. Now we don't have to pay for any real big design. We just need somebody to basically recreate this person for the screen.
Right.
How many jobs and stuff are going to be destroyed? And maybe the argument is that if you are very particular and you know what the guy's supposed to look like, you can't get AI to get you here very easily.
That's true.
But if you can get this, maybe this is better than what you envisioned. That guy looks more like a character.
That's what happens every time I've used the software. It's like I have something in my mind, and then it does something on its own, but I'm like, that looks badass too, or that's way better than what I thought.
Yeah.
And then I come up with this, the Snow King or whatever.
Yeah. What was did they give you the keywords on?
Oh. The keywords to create this image were made by Muhammad Shakri. Papa Dragon, a raw production of Midjourney, where to simulate a royal king inspired by spirit of dragons, combining textures and dragon conceptual features. Interesting.
In your hypothetical world where Midjourney would have kept this private and they would have benefited solely from it, what would that look like? They would...
I don't know.
Because I feel like the way they got to be making bank. I mean, all these people are subscribing, and maybe it's going to just be this, fly-by-night company where like everyone subscribes, and then 6 months later we're all tired of it. But if it's truly getting better, this was something Pi was arguing, if this is just the beta, this isn't even like the final version, and it's true AI art, true artificial intelligence, and it's using all of its experience in the past and all of its users of the present to build something even better in the future.
What is it doing? It's like every time you say use this image rather than these other three or print that one, it's like giving it a thumbs up, like, okay, humans like that, but humans don't like these.
Maybe. I mean, I haven't had very good success inputting an image to reference. Every time I do that, like one was, I wanted to do one of Mike Kelly's planes taking off. Seems like this could do that better than Mike, right? Or create something even crazier than Mike's. Every time I would input, what is it called? Flight turbulence or something?
Wake
turbulence. Every time I inputted Mike's image and I'd send it a huge high-res file, it would produce something that looked nothing like that. So I've had really bad success getting it to, I took some images that I've made and said, hey, use this as a starting point and then create something even crazier. You wouldn't even think that that image was referenced at all. So I don't know what it's doing, but I do know in the month that I've been using this software, maybe it's been 2 months now, the results I'm getting now are way better than where it was a month or two ago.
Yeah.
So it's definitely getting better, but...
All right, next up. I don't think we need to rate these anymore. They're all amazing.
This one needs some work, though.
I don't know. I saw somebody submit this when it came in, and I was like, I would love to print this out and hang this up. Like, this looks like a piece of fancy artwork in a hotel lobby or something. I love it. Reminds me of New York.
Al is telling me I need to give my reference image weight. You can go to Midjourney and somewhere on their site. It's kind of weird because Midjourney is a website, but it's all done through Discord, and so sometimes I find finding the extra prompts that you can add kind of difficult to find. But there is a place where you can find all that, and you can give URLs weight. And I believe it's like 0.25, 0.5, maybe a full 5, the integer 5, is the highest weight you can give it.
Okay.
You would think that would be like it just spits out the image right back to you, but I've had no success of I'll just throw in a reference image with nothing and just say whatever the qualifier is, level 4, just to see if it'd give me a variation. Take a photo and make it look like AI art, and it doesn't do anything with it. So
What do you mean it doesn't do anything?
It just spits out an image that looks like unlike anything that's even related to that image. So you would think if I took your headshot and just threw it in there and said weight 95%, you would get an image that's 95% that exact same image back, but maybe the detail or something crazy is like tweaked just a little bit. But I don't know. I haven't had much success with it.
All right, next up. This one is my personal art.
I do really like this.
I have these two Samsung frame TVs in my house, and I've spent a lot of time trying to find digital art that looks super cool and also realistic. Basically, in case you guys don't know what I'm talking about, this TV becomes artwork when you turn it off. So it doesn't go black. It will project an image, and it matches the ambient light of the room. So if it's bright in the room, TV goes really bright. If it's dark in the room, TV goes really dark. And when it does a good job of matching, which isn't all the time, it's quite compelling. Like, it looks like a painting or a photograph on the wall. And my favorite image that I have found is a black and white image up close of a little wave in the ocean. And it's just kind of like this moody shot. You wouldn't stare at it, for hours, but it's just kind of like off to the side. I think it looks good in the living room. So I was telling Katie, like, I'm going to try to use this AI art to create a painting-like version of that. This is
nothing like that. But.
No, it's nothing like that. And I also, although I love the way this looks, this is like a little too over the top for me to want to hang this on a wall, but I do really like it.
It's wild. My grandmother was a great painter, and she has a lot of pieces like this. I don't think the skies are that dramatic, but when I look at the waves, it reminds me a lot of the way my grandmother would paint waves. She did a lot of paintings in Charleston and Beaufort and the coast of South Carolina. What's funny about this though is I've done some of this stuff too, where I'm watercolor of tulips. And the images I get back look crazy. They're so good. And they will add little signatures and stuff on the bottom. Right. I don't know if I can zoom in enough, but like it looks like a real artist painted this.
I know. It blows my mind.
All right.
Like this one. Very painterly. There are lots of really great art galleries in Charleston, South Carolina, where we're from. And I swear, I've walked around downtown. I've seen stuff that looks just like this. You know, it'll be 20 grand.
It definitely, so I think right now there's still a divide between photography and painting or this kind of art. You know, if you want to photograph, you want to photograph, right?
Yeah.
But I think as a photographer, many times, I don't know if you feel the same way, like I don't necessarily want photos on my wall. I want something more abstract, something away from the thing I do every day, right?
Yeah.
And now that I can create things that look painterly, it almost has already depreciated my value of art.
Yeah.
At least from these studios, you know, like there's art that you see and you're like, that's a masterpiece. That's amazing. I'll never own an original. Or I got to buy some poster print, but then it's not on the canvas and it, you know, it's flat. But if I want to go downtown to the city and buy something like San Juan, like I go to San Juan, I want some art that's Puerto Rican, right? But every time I see it, I'm like, this is so cheesy. It looks like art that's been made in India and then shipped to the town that you live in.
Yeah.
And you're like, man, this is just mass-produced garbage.
Yeah.
But if I can give Midjourney Puerto Rican-themed keywords and come up with a one-of-a-kind piece, and I could get it high-res enough to where I could blow it up big and it would look, you know, it wouldn't look pixelated when you go up to it. I'm like, man, maybe this is the route I go for filling my house up with art.
I know.
And that's such a crazy idea as someone who respects art, values art, wants to like, you know, support and fight for artists. Like I'm looking at this saying like, man, this would look really awesome in a bathroom or a bedroom or, you know, whatever.
I know. That's what's so weird to me, how so many people don't care about this. They're just like, yeah, whatever, man. It's just like you do make art for a living, right? And now this application does it better than you, right?
Yeah.
Like, doesn't that worry you at all? I'm not saying that it's bad or like I wish this didn't exist. I'm not one of these people that's like, we can't have self-driving cars because then what will all the truck drivers do? No, like technology moves things, we need to embrace it, whatever. But it seems to me like if you're an image maker and you do it professionally or you want to do it professionally, you need to incorporate this somehow into your work. I don't know what the answer is there.
I've seen people taking AI art and using it as a backplate, but then their photography is usually really bad.
I've seen this as well.
And they put it on top, and it doesn't match at all. It looks horrible.
Yeah.
And I've been playing around with this at my house, trying to do something like that. And it's like every image I do to make the photography not look so contrasted against AI art, I'm trying to make my photography a little blurrier and like more magical, and I'm adding all these overlays and all this. It becomes this like super dreamy photo that I don't really love and I'm not known for, you know? I have not found a way to take a beautiful portrait of someone in a dress and then add AI art behind it and make it feel like a cohesive piece.
Right.
It feels really weird. So let's move on. This is kind of a similar, I mean, look how similar those are. Like
This
theme maybe.
Yeah. This one, I mean, it still is beautiful art. This is a little bit less of my style, but you know, if you told me like, oh, this is a $7.2 million piece from a Mexican artist from the 1940s, I'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, that's pretty impressive. You know, I wouldn't know.
I want to say this one, I don't know if you pulled them up, but this was prompted using song lyrics.
Okay, this was prompted by Blake Johnson. Dancing in the Moonlight, he calls it. I found out about Midjourney a month ago and dove right in head first. This is from my collection of song lyrics made into images. I love being able to determine the style and guide and the 4 different options. What I love to do most about this is the style and move of the dancer. I did a little cleanup in Photoshop because the AI never leaves a nice clean image. Interesting.
I tried to do, so there is a lyric in Hotel California, the word colitas, no one knows what that is. The lyric is "Warm smell of colitis rising up through the air."
Okay.
And so I was playing around with some song titles too, just to see like, what would AI art, how would it translate this phrase that nobody really knows what it is? You know, people said colitis was the Eagles keyword or a hidden word for like marijuana.
Okay.
And then others say it's like the smell of sulfur, so it's supposed to represent like being in hell.
Okay.
The idea of Hotel California is it's actually talking about checking into hell and never being able to leave. And it produced like a really wild looking image. I wish I had it here to reference, but it was like this valley of sulfur looking, it looked kind of like hell, but I don't believe that word. It's like a slang word that really has no meaning. I don't know that you can look at the definition. It's not a real word.
Gotcha.
So this one was kind of interesting because they used song lyrics as well.
Next up. Oh, I mean, I have seen people doing these modern houses in Midjourney, and they look incredible. This one is a little bit abstract. I mean, you know, there's like a bridge and the two houses down below. So, like, this is confusing. I think it's beautiful art. It doesn't really play like a real house, but I've seen some that look real.
This reminds me of like Italy, where the city's built on top of itself so many times, where you would find yourself in these weird parts of the town where, I mean, the lighting is too different. It's like, it's bright overcast in the bottom part of the frame, you know, down here. But then up here, it looks like a storm. So like some of the lighting and stuff's weird, but it almost has like Greek looking pillars or something. But I feel like this, I see what you're saying. It doesn't feel like a real location, but it does feel like something in the old cities of, you know, Greece or Italy or something like that.
Yeah, that's cool. Next up. Oh, this one is so awesome. I love it, dude. I think this might be my favorite of the entire thing. It has this painting feeling, but it also has this kind of cartoony theme to it. I'm trying to think. I've seen a real painter that kind of has this vibe. Let me see who did this. R. Rosa, The Last House at the End of the World. This was created in Midjourney with the prompts: The Last House at the End of the World, Octane, hyper-realistic, wide-angle lens, cinematic lighting, no defocus.
So those are those keywords I will just copy and throw into my prompt writing, and it like makes no difference. Sometimes Octane or Unreal Engine does tend to push it more towards like video games, but I don't know. I haven't had real success with that. I don't know if I'll just give this idea away because somebody's going to do it. But I feel like somebody like Mike Kelly or some architectural photographer, landscape photographer could do a whole series of just weird buildings and then do sky replacements only that are AI art. It's like the whole series is that. And so it gives you this, because you know, I can't think of a way to really incorporate AI art into photography and make it look good. But if you had weird places in Iceland where, you know, you have like the lone black church, and then you make the sky something really crazy, and you could bump up the clarity to kind of give it that cartoony look in the photo, maybe you could find some balance where you could blend that really well. And people are like, man, this is real locations, it's real photography, but look, it's a tidal wave coming over the scene, or it's a crazy sky, or aliens are coming in. Like, you probably wouldn't want it to be too crazy to where it's cheesy, but a sky like this is kind of like that perfect play.
Yeah. Next up.
We need to try to figure out who's going to win these tutorials, too. I don't remember how many more images we have submitted.
So here's another house. Again, I mean, just totally different vibe and theme and style than the last image we just saw. I'm not talking about like, oh, the last one was scary and this one's bright. Like the style of painting that you would attribute to a completely different artist.
Yeah. It's like,
is created in seconds by the exact same program.
I mean, look at this. The functionality of this house doesn't totally really make sense, right? Like windows, and it's kind of like a fun house or something. And then this one's got this like is it like Gaudi, the
Oh yeah.
Barcelona architect?
Yeah.
I think they referenced a real architect. Is this Frank Lloyd Wright, or who do they put in here?
Let's see. This was prompted by Dan Francis. FLW within the Star Wars galaxy. Prompt. Oh, Frank Lloyd Wright, mid-century modern house on a hill, grassland, dramatic lighting, golden ratio, hyper-detailed Star Wars.
I mean, you see a little bit of all that.
I do.
What's crazy is if you zoom in, though, look at how functional. I mean, it looks like there's a porch, and there's like entryways, and like, you know, I feel like a month or two ago, and this could just be like anecdotal, but it would produce a house, and you're like, oh, there's no way to get access to that balcony, and it looks crooked and weird, but it's starting to get to where maybe you could actually take this to an architect and say, this is the dream house.
Isn't that crazy? Like, because I keep thinking about building a house here in Puerto Rico.
They would never accept this design.
Well, that's true.
You'd
This
be
neighborhood
banned.
would be like, hell no. But if you could just put in houses that you like the vibe of, and this would just spit out tons of different ideas, and then you could take it to a real architect and be like, hey, look at this.
And I think, is that where some of this value could be in? Pi was saying the value is never going to be in the exported image, but it's how you use that image for something else. And so he was saying, you know, if you're a book writer and then you use it for the cover, but you have to have the book, right? It's like, it's useless until you have the book. Or he's doing these like relationship podcasts. And so an image that represents a theme is now valuable, not because the art's amazing, but because the topic we're talking about does fit that theme. Imagine if you could say, I have 12 homes throughout the world, and all 12 were built using design elements from AI art. And you attach AI art to the physical house, and there's only 12 of them in the world, or the United States, or wherever. It's kind of like what Frank Lloyd Wright was known for. He builds these crazy homes, and now you buy the house and you value the house because of the architect. Imagine if you say, these were all built, and they're crazy looking. No architect, I can't say no architect, because these are clearly using images referenced on the internet to build it, but this still doesn't look completely like a Frank Lloyd Wright house.
No.
And doesn't totally look like Star Wars. There's elements of it that remind me of that dome house that you and Mike shot in Charleston. Like, there's all these things that come together, but it's truly a unique piece. If you could build something tangible on that, and the reference was this photo, I could see where that's what makes the building in New York City so valuable. Is like, this was the first skyscraper designed with AI art, and it's like it's a piece of the time, it's a piece of the architect who helped combine those things. I don't know. I think that's all kind of interesting. But on its own, is this image ever going to be valuable? I don't know. It seems kind of disposable to me.
I'll ask this question to all of the photographers watching right now. I know you and I both experienced it. You remember when we first got into photography, and photography was like this dream that we had. Wow, maybe we could make money doing this. And we would look up to all these photographers and go, oh my gosh, their work is so good.
Yeah.
How do they create that? And then over time, we started to learn how they were doing it. And it went from like magic to like, oh, you just put a softbox there or whatever. Oh, you can do that in Photoshop. Yeah. That only takes a few seconds. And now the value of it in our minds totally dropped off because we didn't want to pay somebody else. Like, for example, you'd go into a store and you'd be looking for, you know, art to hang on your wall, and there'd be a photograph, and you're like, that's a cool photo, but they want $2,000 for this. Like, I could do that, you know? And so you just write it off. I just feel like that is what is happening with all art because of this now. People are just, and maybe it's kind of already happened. The average person is not spending thousands of dollars per piece on art for their home.
Yeah.
And people, they go to IKEA, they go online, they buy posters, you know, they're not.
For the average person, I think, though, Pi and I were kind of getting into this a little bit, is it's like the 5% The uber wealthy are the ones that are still going to value those things. The uber wealthy are still going to buy muscle cars from the 50s, 60s, and 70s when driving any car is outlawed. When we all have self-driving cars and you just summon a car and it picks you up and it takes you, the only people that are going to really value the most, iconic cars in history, not totally value, but the only ones that are going to put money down to value it are going to be the uber wealthy. The only ones that are going to buy, I feel like this with Peter Lick. Like, I don't necessarily love all of Peter Lick's work, and when I get to know other landscape photographers and the veil is lifted and you realize how these are made, I kind of view Peter Lick's images as cheaper art now. But those people that can afford that, somehow still, which are the uber wealthy, that are going to buy a $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 print, they're going to keep that value up. And I don't know if Peter Lick is the perfect example because maybe his art's going to fall at some point. But if you look at, classic, if you had an Anne Leibovitz piece of art, I mean, you know how hard it is to buy her prints? I don't know if she particularly sells them on her site. But you can go to these famous photographers' websites, Mario Testino, and you'll see like, oh, if you want a poster print, it's like $8,000. And the average person's not buying that, but the people that do buy it, is that always going to resell for $8,000, or with inflation or with his death, is it going to rise to where it's worth more than what you bought it for?
Eventually, there will be too many artists to keep track of. Well, no, like, I can't even think of the names, but all these artists from like the 50s, 60s, 70s who just drew like blue squares and then they sold for $50 million or whatever. Yeah. It's like, how many of those can the world, every human on earth, support? Maybe Mario Testino is like a super famous fashion photographer and he'll be famous for a while, but will he be famous in 200 years from now? Will that $8,000 print be $80,000 in 30 years? I don't know. It seems
it's like you start saying like, what happens to a Michael Jordan rookie card? Does Michael Jordan eventually not? I mean, until he's surpassed, and maybe you could say there's a few basketball players that might have surpassed him, but until that person's totally, removed from our society, will that rookie card always hold value? What is it everyone's trading now? The Pokemon cards.
Yeah.
Like, are they pulling in more money and value than ever today?
I think so.
At what point will that be irrelevant to the next generation or two?
Right. And it's like people
you and I have had this
are
argument
excited about it because, like, well, my dad always told me that the Mickey Mantle card was the best, so like I've been looking at it and I want it and everything. But it's like, how many generations can you go before they're like, why do I want cartoon photos of made-up animals?
Yeah.
I've never even seen or heard of this cartoon before. That looks like a children's toy. I don't want that.
Yeah.
But you could look at a lot of modern art and say those prices are ridiculous, but they continue to go up.
It seems like it goes, and we've had this discussion about like, is current music better or worse than old music, and are the Beatles and Jimi Hendrix and all these names going to last generations and generations, or is it we're only a generation or two removed from it to where I still view Elvis Presley and Michael Jackson and Madonna and Jimi Hendrix and the Beatles, I hold this handful of artists up on this pedestal, and you've always been like, it's just because you lived through it or your parents lived through it, and it's close enough. I've always made the argument it's because they were the groundbreaking people at the time. That somebody like Michael Jackson or Elvis, they broke barriers that will never be broken again. And so in 100 years, there will be a new artist that will break a different barrier, but nobody will ever sell more albums than Michael Jackson's Thriller or the Eagles' Greatest Hits. Like, that will probably never, we don't even buy records anymore. Now it's streaming. It's like a totally different metric. So in that sense, are these things that are famous going to always be famous because they were popular and iconic in that period and they stood out? Like Britney Spears, in 100 years, I feel like Britney Spears will fall off the face of the planet, but Madonna or maybe not Tina Turner, who else could you name? Like the Rolling Stones, like there will be some artists that will still be generating more streams than Whoop, There It Is, which at the time was the biggest song in the world, but over history, it's going to fall away where,
maybe
Dr. Dre may or Tupac, like, I don't know. Maybe it's an argument for a different time, but
well,
I feel like they're related.
You're just choosing all of your favorite bands as like they will remain.
But when I say Thriller, I mean, yes, I'm a Michael Jackson fan, but he has the #1 greatest selling of all time. It's not, that's my favorite. Like, that record is that.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, you would have to say, like, well, your favorite's the Backstreet Boys. And
Hold on, no, I didn't
they
say
have
that.
like the 10th greatest selling album, and I'm like wanting to shoot myself in the head, but there is something to that.
You're
The
right.
Backstreet Boys as a band, a group, sold more records at that time than anybody else, and for some unforsaken reason, the Backstreet Boys will be in history longer than what's the one that just came out with Harry Styles? What's that group?
One Direction?
One Direction. One Direction will be forgotten far earlier than the Backstreet Boys, simply because they did similar things, but Backstreet Boys did it first.
I don't know if that's true.
That's how I believe it.
I don't know if that's true. I think it's just because we lived through the Backstreet Boys. But like, I bet if you had a daughter and maybe you saw how they went crazy for One Direction. Like, I remember.
It's like the Jackson 5. The Jackson 5 were even before NSYNC, Backstreet Boys. But there's probably been 1,000 bands like the Jackson 5, but they become the most powerful and popular and most record sales. They also had Michael Jackson. But you will know the Jackson 5. Like, I think my kids and their kids might know the Jackson 5 far. They will become the Mozarts and they'll be the artists of those time periods that will be solidified forever.
But here's the thing. The time period of Mozart and Beethoven, I don't know. But I would imagine the time period of Mozart and Beethoven is like a pretty broad time.
It's a lifetime. It's like 30 years, 50 years.
Okay.
Like
but all of the bands that you've named are like within 6 years.
No, I mean, Michael Jackson sold records for 30 years. The Rolling Stones are still touring. Like, they've had all their original members for the most part.
But I'm just saying.
For their whole career.
Sure. But if I said, hey, name a musician from the 1750s, you'd be able to, like, you couldn't name any.
Part of that, I would argue, is that we just didn't have recorded music the same way. Like, you don't know. And the only reason we know people like Beethoven or, Tchaikovsky or any of these people is because their music did somehow transcend that. And it became recorded today, and there's symphonies, and you can go hear it. But with recorded music, I think it's going to last longer. Because you know what it is. You could buy it, you could trade it, you could hold it, possess it. You have that artist performing it. I don't even know, do we have Beethoven pieces that he conducted or had?
I don't know.
I don't know if that even exists.
I don't know.
But you do have Michael Jackson performing here on video with the band. Like, it's a tangible, real thing that you can look at. Elvis changed the world by going on Ed Sullivan and shaking his hips. Like, we can look at that, and everyone can experience that. Where I can't, it's like Jesus Christ. What a huge character in, like, religion. None of us can see what happened at all because there was no medium to actually. We have writings about it.
But he's pretty famous.
He is very famous. He's one of the most famous people in the world.
Yeah, so that negates your entire argument.
No, I'm just saying that people who come early in this one type of field, bringing it back to this, I kind of feel like there's going to be somebody who becomes uber famous by making AI art in its infancy. And then in 30 years, AI art will be so much better, as you might argue, recordings today are better than they were in the 50s. But it's so much, there was no groundbreaking barriers taking place in 30 years from now like there are today. And so I think we may find an AI artist today who becomes uber famous, and all the people at the time are like, the artists are like, this is ridiculous, it's not real art. But somehow it becomes the Beeple. Beeple's a great example. Like, there's going to be billions of people in the next hundreds of years. Maybe not billions, but there's going to be a lot of people that do what Beeple do, but they'll never reach the success, mainly because maybe Beeple did it first. Casey Neistat, first guy any of us know that comes up with a video every day for years. Like, that had never been done. Casey Neistat's going to be viewed in that light, where somebody else who does it 10, 20 years later, it's not quite as popular. But they may do some little twist to it, and that's what makes them popular. But the idea of being a vlogger for, a significant amount of time is going to not happen again, I don't think.
I just think because you lived through all of this, you can remember these names. But your children will not know Casey Neistat. Unless he does something new
Casey Neistat's
for them.
not big enough. I'm just trying to like throw another example of something off the top of my head that we could live through. But I think in 100 years, when you say, who are the musicians of the 20th century, there are going to be a lot of names that people are like, oh yeah, I actually still like Pink Floyd. I think that's still going to be a thing. People are going to be like, the music of Pink Floyd is still listened in 100 years from now. Whereas some of my favorite artists, like, I don't know, Guns N' Roses, I don't think are going to have that same effect. I think Guns N' Roses will be forgotten about, whereas Pink Floyd and the Rolling Stones will still be prevalent.
I have no idea. We'll just have to become old and find out.
Wow.
Next image.
Should we move on?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I tried to add a lot of different images in here, and this was a really cool landscape that I feel like passes as a legit landscape. I mean, it's...
I know. If I saw this, I would think this is a painting of a real place. But it's neither a painting nor a real place. Let me see who took this or created this. This was prompted by Kevin Johnston, created with Midjourney, was shooting for a southwestern landscape photo/painting with pastel tones. And some of the keywords: fog, rolling through Grand Canyon, landscape at sunset, majestic, pastel tones.
I like just how simple and subtle this is.
I know,
Nothing's over the
awesome.
top, and the AI didn't add crazy stars and a lot of weird detail that make it look like something a computer generated.
Man, when I was playing with this, I was blown away, but I also was like, I don't want to pay the $30 a month or whatever. What am I going to do with this? But just seeing all this stuff again, it's getting me excited. Like, I want to make some more of this stuff. Maybe I will spend $30 for a month or something.
There's something about all of this too that makes me see if I can articulate this. It's like, is it detrimental for our primitive minds? Like, our art and our technology are moving at such a fast rate, but humanity is evolving so slowly that it's causing us to not, like, one way to potentially say this is, we got to travel the world with Eliacardi. We've seen a lot of incredible places, and don't you find yourself going to certain places, maybe here in Puerto Rico, and people are like, this is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, and you're just kind of like, it's pretty, but like, man, I've been to Iceland.
Yeah.
I've been to New Zealand. You go throughout Italy, and like, you see cool little towns in Italy, but you're like, man, there's one town in Italy that was crazier than all this, and I've been there. Mm-hmm. I was listening to like some little short or something on YouTube that just popped up, and some guy was talking about porn, and he was this one of these uber famous TikTok guys, right? I don't know their names because I don't watch TikTok, but they were just saying like, they cut out porn from their life because they said, it got to the point where I was searching for things that would fill my desire of anything I want. This cornucopia of, maybe it was even Louis C.K. talking about this on a recent Joe Rogan podcast. But it was like this idea that like I could have anything I want, and I realized it's like rotting my desires and my chemical imbalance in my head with actual real people. I don't remember if they were talking about their wives or talking about relationships in general. But it's kind of the same with AI. Is like when you start making locations that look better than anything that we have access to.
That God created himself.
Do you start to think that this kind of thing, because you start going down the road of like augmented reality porn is like something a lot of people talk about, where you can have your own fantasy that feels very real and you're interacting with it. Like, that's horrifying. I look at kids that sit and play video games all day. That is nothing like the video games we used to play. We'd play video games, Mortal Kombat or something, and after a while you're like, all right, I gotta go outside, and I'm not really interacting with a human. Yeah. Video games today now, you're connected to the web and you're having real conversation. It's way more of a community than anything we had with a console that didn't connect to the internet. I just wonder if all of this stuff is going to, some people might argue like that might be some of the problems our society in America is facing. Why are so many kids depressed? Why do so many people feel like they're isolated? Why are we having all these school shootings? The argument is it the guns or is it something else? Like, we can't figure it out. But it surely feels like our society is more on edge through all of these technical advances, or at least these advances are playing some huge role in it.
It's certainly one step closer to not believing anything you see on the internet,
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I used to, as somebody who does photography and Photoshop for a living, I would see this stuff online, and I would always feel like I could pick out fake stuff.
Wasn't there a golf video you had recently? Was it
yeah, but then when
Tom Brady or something?
the videos start coming, or like the apps that can like tune your face and shrink your body and make your boobs look bigger and all this stuff, and I started to realize like, man, I can't really tell.
Yeah.
And then the deep fakes started coming out, and at the beginning you're like, wow, that's pretty impressive, but I can tell. Look, it's
Not John Travolta on that face.
But then recently I'm looking at the deep fakes and going, oh my gosh, I would not be able to tell that this is fake.
Have you seen the one of like Tom Cruise playing a Dave Matthews song? And
No,
the
I
guy
don't
like
think I've seen
laughs. He's like, watch this. And he starts playing, what's Dave Matthews?
Crash
Into Me. And he's just doing all this stuff that Tom Cruise would do. He's like, sounds so good, doesn't it? And you're just like, that. If you didn't know better, you would think Tom Cruise is actually doing that.
Yeah, and people have been warning for a long time, like, oh, soon they're going to be able to do this to politicians or world leaders, and you're not going to know if that was Donald Trump with the PP tapes or not. You know, I'm like, come on. But I'm like, we are there.
I always like watching the news in other countries when you go there. Like if you go to Dubai, you can watch local news there, or you could watch, what is the Russia one? Is it
RT?
RT. And I would watch that on the treadmill or whatever, and you would hear the perspective of either the world that you're not hearing from the United States, or you would hear a story that the United States, we've spun it in a different way. I always found that so interesting.
Yeah.
And it makes me wonder if everything we're seeing on our news, it's not a deep fake yet, but we're already being fed this propaganda. But when you're inside the propaganda, you want to believe that it's not propaganda. You want to believe that Trump is selling nuclear secrets to Russia, and the FBI has caught it, and our two sides are wildly separated by it. You're a crazy Trumper or you're a crazy left-winger, and that's what it is. But if you go outside the country and view it from the inside in, you could have a totally different reality. You could be like, wow, the United States is literally falling apart, and none of this stuff's really true. Trump's not really selling any of this stuff, but like the FBI is corrupted too. Look what they did over here in this other war that like we don't even talk about, you know?
Right.
And so when you start mixing the AI and the artificial intelligence and the deep fake stuff on there, I don't know how we as a society are going to be able to.
Well, you just look at all the stuff that people started believing and posting about during COVID, all the misinformation stuff that is obviously fake.
Yeah.
Or like you could say like, oh, that's interesting, that sounds plausible, but with just a little bit of research, you could go like, that's not true.
Yeah.
Come on. And even with the websites that would do the debunking, you'd send people to Snopes and they'd be like, Snopes is run by the liberal media.
Yeah.
So anything on Snopes is a lie. And you're like, what? And
I think that's to me, that's the biggest crisis the world's going to face. We're already in it. It's how does humanity differentiate truth from fiction? That's the number one. That's like, to me, that's more important than global warming, because you can't solve global warming. Which
you can't even agree
if you can't even agree of what's real and what's true. So like having a baby, I'm like a little nervous about it. I'm like thinking, man, is this really going well for society? I'm a little scared that the stuff they're going to have to deal with it's not like our way of life. You can look at it this way. Our way of life is better in the world than it's ever been. Starvation is at the lowest level it's probably ever been. Medicine, and we just survived a pandemic. Maybe this pandemic would have been way worse if it was 100 years ago. Like there's certain things, I think wealth, like more people are wealthy, like there's a gap, and the gap is getting bigger. There's more people in poverty and more millionaires than ever before. But more people fall into that category of doing better.
Yeah.
It's like indisputable. But when you start looking at the mental stuff that's going on behind the scenes, you could have all that. You could have great medicine. You could have a better way of life, all that. But if all of this stuff we're feeding ourselves is now deteriorating the way that we think, we're literally going crazy trying to make sense of all this and debunk this stuff. Like my parents didn't deal with debunking stuff when they were our age. They were working on their careers and their jobs and raising a family, like real things. And then here we all are running around trying to like stand up for what I think is right and be woke and be all these things. And it's like, does any of that really matter? Or are we all falling victim to some bigger pandemic that's happening, psychologically? And I think all this kind of stuff that we're looking at today is like, it's only going to make that worse.
I agree. Let's see what's next. So here's something that looks a lot more realistic. I feel like this one,
It's closer to the photograph examples.
yeah, if I saw this, a couple months ago, I would think this was a
retouched.
photograph that was highly edited in Photoshop to make it kind of look like digital artwork or whatever. But again, I would never in a million years, and I would be amazed. I would say whoever created this is an amazing artist.
I mean, immediately you can tell the catch lights seem off, right? Are they like mirrored?
Yeah.
It wasn't smart enough to put the lighting in the same, but it did.
You know what I would have done? I would have looked at those eyes and been like, oh my gosh, what type of lighting have they done? Like, they've come up with a new type of lighting that I haven't even considered before. How did they do it?
But they held the prism in front of the lens to
Yeah.
get that look.
How many more do we have?
So that's the last one.
All
so
right.
our two winners. Well, let me see. Is that the last one? Yeah. So if you have who's the name on this one?
This one was created by, sorry, don't have it pulled up here, J. Lamb.
Okay. So that is the winner of the random tutorial, and then the landscape one. Who was that?
The landscape one was created by Kevin Johnston. So yeah, send me a private message on fstoppers.com. Let me know which tutorial you would like at fstoppers.com/store. Anybody who's watching this, if you're a photographer, join the next critique. It's going to be on speed. We want to see images with motion blur. You can go to fstoppers.com/contests. And anything else you have to say? Sounds like you're going to go home and think about the destruction of humanity because of misinformation.
No, I actually have a date with my wife tonight. So
Yeah, you're going to watch.
No, don't tell anybody.
Why?
You know what I'm doing tonight?
Yeah.
Did I tell you?
Yeah.
Oh, well, don't say
Well-
it. I don't know if she's watching.
Oh, Isaac told me.
Well, she doesn't know anything.
Ah.
So don't even mention
You know what? I can guarantee you she's not watching.
Probably not, but just in case she is. Like, I've kept it a secret so far that I want to not... she doesn't have any clue what we're doing. So tonight's a little date night. But, yeah, I think about this stuff all the time, and I think it's rotting my brain out.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad things
that
are going
note-
so well for you. Guys, thank you for watching. And we're going to start ramping up the critique. We're going to, I think we're going to go out to advertisers soon. We're going to make them bigger prize pool, get more people involved.
Because everybody at this point has a tutorial, right? Every possible person that watches this has won one of these at least.
Yeah, we want to make it bigger. We want the production value to be a little bit higher. We might go get some guest judges and stuff, and we'll see. We've got some ideas coming your way. But thanks
if you
for watching.
want to, we also have the YouTube discount code. So if you didn't win and you want to support the channel and get a tutorial, you can use YouTube as a discount code to save 15%.
At fstoppers.com/store. Thank you for watching, guys. We will see you soon.